Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching another one of my interviews here in the Louisiana Capitol Rotunda. With me is Louisiana State Representative Beryl Amadee. Representative Amadee, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, I got to tell you, you got some interesting legislation that I think I always tell people that to watch what other states are doing because it's coming to a state near you, and I repeat that in every video, so my listeners are probably tired of hearing that, but I don't think that Americans should ever get tired of hearing about it because the legislation that's going on here, some of the stuff that you're going to talk about today is stuff that we can stop on a federal level if we stop it on a state level. Would that be correct?
That's a good way to say it, yes.
I love it. Well, we're going to talk about the budget a little bit later, but most importantly, let's talk about some of your bills here. You got HB 121 requires public schools to provide at least one recess period per school day in schools of any grade, kindergarten through fifth grade.
Yes.
They don't do recess already?
In some schools, there is no recess at all. Shockingly, huh?
What do they replace it with?
Nothing. I guess they just took up all the minutes of the day with instructional time, or at least that's what they claim they've done.
Well, I've heard from other people that some of the instructions is things like, I don't know, there's just some various miscellaneous things that I can't recall because there's like 10 or 12 things actually. What are some of the things that you saw they replaced it with?
Well, one of the things that I believe is most common is that there's a subscriber news channel that is supposed to be news of the day from
This is one of them I heard.
all over the country and around the world, and it's usually during homeroom. They've extended homeroom to do more than just roll call, and they play this news program for students. But from what we've seen with mainstream media type news, that news program may be a little less news and a little more propaganda. So we're not always happy about what they've replaced.
So they replaced PE and recess with propaganda.
Mostly recess because PE is still required.
Okay. Yeah, I asked about that off camera a little bit because I had PE when I was growing up, and you say they still have it, but recess is something different that the younger grades got that they're not getting now.
That's right. Now, if it was up to me, everybody would have recess. We could use recess.
Yeah, exactly,
right?
exactly.
But right now, in K through 12 education, there are required instructional minutes for physical education, which is PE. So while PE might include physical activity, it's instructional time. So even if you're actively playing something like, say, basketball, it's still considered instructional time. If they're studying basketball, the students don't have a choice. They have to play basketball, right?
Right.
Recess, on the other hand, is supervised non-instructional time. It's actually free time. In a true recess, the students can do whatever activity they choose. And if that's running around the yard, that's fine. If it's laying down on the ground and taking a nap, that's fine. It doesn't have to be physical activity, but it certainly will usually be physical activity for young students who've been sitting still for hours.
Who could be against recess?
There are some people who apparently are against recess. This is why we have to bring a bill to require it. And many people are asking me, your bill only requires 15 minutes. This is silly. Children need a lot more than 15 minutes of recess in a day, and I completely agree. But for many schools...
Well, last year you tried 30 minutes, right?
I tried 30 minutes, and the School Boards Association and the Superintendents Association were adamantly opposed because they said we could not possibly add 30 minutes to the school day without extending the school day. And if you're not going to send us more money, then we're going to call it an unfunded mandate.
It sounds to me, though, like children who need extra playtime, that have high energy, students with ADHD could benefit from having more recess downtime.
Oh, absolutely. Now, the bill only requires a minimum of 15 minutes, but in a school that has no recess, 15 minutes is a major improvement. But what we found with recess, when you give the children time, some free time, to go in and do whatever
Unwind.
they please, yes, unwind, whether it's sit down, run, jump, whatever, when you give the students that free time, when they come back into the classroom, they're more ready to learn. You don't have to spend time reviewing much. They're ready to learn the next thing. They're more focused. They're calmer. So basically, with more recess, the amount of medication that the ADHD students might be receiving is reduced. Sometimes it's no longer needed. The grades go up, the discipline problems go down. What's not to love?
sounds like a great bill. I hope this one goes through.
Thank
You've
you.
got HB 152 as a family law constitutional amendment. Constitutional amendment provides relative to fundamental parental rights. What is this one about?
This bill is no longer moving. It has been killed. This was
Who killed it? Senate, House?
The House.
Okay.
Yeah. This bill would have allowed the voters of the state to vote to put into our state constitution parental rights are fundamental. And that means that before the government can intervene between parent and child, it has to practice strict scrutiny. It means that they have to have a compelling interest, and whatever the remedy is, it has to be carried out by the least restrictive means.
This is quite interesting, considering there's a bill on that would allow parents to be able to transition their children. So is that conflicting? I'm curious, how will this one aid that one, or how will that happen?
Well, there was.
Do you follow where I'm going with this? I'm trying
yes,
to,
and that was one of the big
protects
questions.
parental rights.
Right.
Is one of the questions you said?
Yes, that was one of the big questions that caused some people to be hesitant about the bill. What they were saying is we are currently trying to outlaw these procedures on minors. And if your bill passes and we say that parental rights are fundamental and the government can't intrude, does that then mean that a parent has the right to put their child through those medical procedures? Now, to most people, we understand that saying that a parental right is fundamental does not give parents the right to abuse their children. And so if you see those procedures as abuse, then obviously no.
Okay.
The problem is we have some very activist judges in the state, and so if someone wanted to make that case, what if they end up in a court where the judge actually believes the parents should be allowed to harm their own children in that way? So for now, the bill is not moving this session. It will be brought up maybe next year after the other bill becomes law. That way we don't even give the opportunity for courts to make really bad rulings that we have to keep appealing. Once the other bill becomes law, we could bring this constitutional amendment, and then it should fall right into place, and we won't have those big confusing court
What's
arguments.
interesting is that we always find the legislative session, there's always bills that have unintended consequences that conflict with another bill, and so this one not moving forward doesn't conflict with some of the bills that's going through right now.
Right. It will be a better environment to bring a constitutional amendment after we have restrictions in place in law that prohibit the medical procedures that would harm minors. Just like right now, we already have in law a prohibition on female genital mutilation. We already have in law that you cannot abuse your child, can't starve them, can't beat them, and so all those things are already in law. Passing a parental rights constitutional amendment does not change that. With a constitutional amendment that says parental rights are fundamental, it does not protect the right of a parent to harm their child. No one in Louisiana has the right to harm a child.
Okay.
And that won't change.
I agree 100%. That's interesting, and I wanted you to be able to explain that because I think people are interested in hearing what's going on in the what's happening there in the chamber over there,
Yeah.
and I thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
You've got you've got 383 requires each insurer subject to the Louisiana Insurance Guarantee Association law to provide for a data transfer plan. You're already shaking your head, so you know what that one is.
Yes, that's a really long explanation for a really simple, short bill, which has, by the way, already passed. It's passed the House and the Senate, thank goodness. Right now in Louisiana, if a property insurance company is in danger of going under, they are required by law to send certain information to the Guarantee Association so that if they do go under, those claims that are still in progress can be handled by the association. Well, right now we found that sometimes the information arrives at the Guarantee Association office a little late in the process, and either their staff has already gone home because the business has failed, or the information comes over but it's not in a useful format that can communicate with their programs. So what this bill does is it moves the trigger back a little bit so that it's a little bit earlier in the process where the insurance company that may be going under has to send this information to the Guarantee Association. And by sending it earlier, they're still functioning. They still have staff. So if the Guarantee Association has any questions or any concerns or can't work the program, there's still somebody at the office answering the phone that they can communicate with.
This is one of those hidden little things that we don't realize needs fixing in our state,
Yes.
but it's one of the little things that just that fixes or repairs a cog in the wheel, or
Right.
oils it a little bit better to make it
Right.
run a little bit more efficiently for the people of Louisiana.
Well, after several emergencies over the years, like hurricanes and floods, what we found is everybody would like the processes to move more quickly. And so in this case, under current law, with the current trigger, when an insurance company fails, sometimes the claims that are still in process take months or even years to complete. By moving this trigger back a little bit, the information gets sent over sooner, and it can be processed in a more timely manner. And if, by the way, the company doesn't fail and they recover, no harm done. The information is protected. There's no privacy violations or anything, and then they can just return to functioning and keep on insuring people.
I like this one. This is, I think, something that, like I said, helps people in Louisiana on their insurance policies. And I'm being oversimplified about that for a purposeful reason, because I think a lot of people just need to be simplified sometimes. So you gave some great explanation. I tried to simplify it a little bit more for people.
Okay.
So we've got HB 415 provides relative to central bank digital currency.
Yes.
This is going to be a big one that I think everybody in our country should be pay attention to.
I hope so. That bill has made its way through the House, and just this morning it passed a Senate committee, so the next stop is on the Senate floor. So far we have had no opposing votes. It's passed with flying colors. We have had some questions because there are some people who are not familiar with the whole concept of central bank digital currency. And so I have to assure them that this bill is only to protect Louisiana if and when the federal government decides to impose a central bank digital currency. The bill does not prohibit any digital currency that we know of right now, such as Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, has nothing to do with that. This is only about central bank digital currency. And that means that a federal government entity would be the issuer of digital currency. Now, this is not any currency where you can go to the bank and withdraw a $100 bill and walk around with it in your pocket. This is completely digital. In fact, the transactions won't even go through your local bank. So this is not something you're going to be able to handle at your Chase or your Capital One down the street. This is a centralized bank run by a federal agency or an entity. The reason that we're pushing for this little protection in state law is because if and when the federal government does put into force a central bank digital currency, it has the potential to allow the federal government to control all of your financial transactions.
Right.
So we don't want any centralized bank to be able to dictate when we may or may not be allowed to spend our own money and on what. We don't want that level of control. Right now, there are a few other countries where something like this has already been in place, and there are several countries that are looking into it and considering implementing it. And the reason I brought the bill this year is because under the current administration, President Biden had issued an executive order already requiring the study and the study of the implementation of a central bank digital currency. So our current administration is already moving forward and looking into this and figuring out how it would work. So there's no reason to think that they're not going to try it.
I understand. I've been a little bit worried about it myself because, like you said, if there's a central bank digital currency, the government has control of all transactions, all money, and not only that, but imagine, if you will, a government that's in control of our health care, and they say, I saw the meme about this a long time ago, I can't take credit for it, but I'm resurrecting it, when it says, you can't buy that pizza because, your health isn't right. So if the government knows all your business, your health business, your driving record, everything. Imagine, if you will, they start controlling what you're able to spend your money on through a digital currency card because of what they know.
Yes,
and this stops digital currency in Louisiana. This stops a federal digital currency in Louisiana.
Yeah, a central bank digital currency by a U.S. agency. We actually did not bother to include a restriction on central bank digital currency from some other country because even if you dabble in that, they can't control you here.
Exactly.
So that was left out. And in addition to that, the reason I'm bringing this bill, and it's such a little minor, intricate change to a definition in statute here, and not a complete ban, is because as a state legislature, we don't have the authority to ban the federal government from implementing a central bank digital currency. Only Congress can do that. So, in addition to the bill, I've also brought House Concurrent Resolution 71, which has also made its way through the House, and it's over in the Senate. And that is an urgent request of Congress telling them that it's, as a legislature for Louisiana, it's our desire that if and when they get the opportunity, they should reject any effort to create a central bank digital currency in the United States.
I absolutely love this bill.
Well, thank you.
You know, because I'm somebody that says, look, I'm against government control. For people who say, hey, this would be easier if we had it, well, the only thing it gets to be easier on is the federal government to watch every transaction that you make and control every dollar that you spend if they want to.
That's right. And not only that, but everything would then go digital. You would no longer have tangible currency.
Yeah.
And so right now, there are many transactions that would just be completely restricted or impossible.
No more putting a $10 bill in for your, for the birthday gift. No more tipping somebody, on things, and it takes out a lot of motivation. But this is almost kind of like a lot of states and communities have become sanctuary states or sanctuary communities when it comes to the Second Amendment. This is, so in relation to that, this is kind of like making Louisiana a sanctuary state as it pertains to a centralized digital currency by the federal government.
Yes, we want to be able to spend our hard-earned money as we please within the reason, within the bounds of law.
Retaining our 10th Amendment rights.
Yes.
The state of Tennessee has some similar laws to this. Is this something? Does Tennessee have something similar to this particular one?
There are about 11 states that are handling this issue right now, and I don't remember whether Tennessee's efforts are similar to ours or not, but this same kind of bill is moving right now in other legislatures around the country.
I love it. Like I said in the beginning, that's one thing about this is important about, because there's a lot of people that watch this that say, hey, this might be happening in my state. How can we stop it? We got HCR 97, pending House Agriculture, creates a Louisiana Agricultural Field Burning Task Force to study alternatives to field burning I'll let you explain that one.
Okay. Well, right now, in the sugarcane growing process, there is a certain need to burn the fields after the cane has been harvested to prepare the fields and get rid of the debris and get it ready for the next planting.
Right, exactly.
There are also burn requirements or procedures in other kinds of agriculture, and even in timber. They don't actually burn the trees, they burn the undergrowth.
The undergrowth, right.
So that we don't have the
waste.
Wildfires.
Right.
Yes. So agricultural burning is a very useful tool throughout many industries. But this particular bill is not going anywhere. It was killed in the House Agriculture
What would it
Committee.
have done?
It would have created a task force to study alternatives to burning in each of the industries. For example, in the sugarcane industry, which is the one I'm most familiar with because, that's my district.
It's your district, right.
And I grew up between sugarcane fields. In the sugarcane industry, they're already experimenting with other kinds of processes that may turn out to do very well for them. One example that I got to see was, you know how on your lawnmower you can attach a bag to catch all the grass so you don't have to rake?
Right.
Okay. Well, the harvester in these fields where they're experimenting with this device, they've created an attachment to the harvester that takes the same debris that they would normally burn later, and it mulches it and puts it back down into the soil right under the wheels of the harvester so that it gets compressed into the dirt.
Right.
And so
becomes
there's
compost.
No need to, yes.
Makes it
there's
more
no
fertile.
Need to burn.
I love that idea.
And so far, they're in their, I think they're in their second year of experimenting with this. And because of the sugarcane growing process, it's going to take at least 3 years in a row before they have real numbers for us. But at the moment, it's looking pretty good. So that's one. But also, we have the industry itself is studying all the potential uses for the byproducts from the sugarcane harvest. For example, right here in the Capitol building, the ceiling tiles are made of bagasse, which is a byproduct of sugarcane.
Okay.
And although I don't know if there's an industry right now for ceiling tiles, they are still using this as a soundproofing material for recording studios and such.
I have one at home.
There you go. It might be made of bagasse.
I might be back.
It might be. And there are other uses. There are biofuels. I mean, there are a lot of people at work right now looking at all the potential products that can be made and that are being made from sugarcane, and all our other industries too. I mean, you have rice farmers, you have other industries in the state that also include burning in their process, and they're looking at possible alternatives too. But the resolution did not pass, and I believe it was because in the original version of the resolution as filed, it included many lines about statistics about the environment. For example, when you burn the sugarcane, what is given off into the air, and air quality and all. And the industry was afraid because they felt that the way the resolution was drafted, they assumed that the study commission was going to go in with the end already set, which would be to ban burning. But that's not really the purpose of the task force. It was to study alternatives. And then
it was a study what were the negative effects of burning, and what are the positive effects of it, what are the positive effects of alternate things, to give people more choices.
Yes.
But I guess it amazes me at a time when they're talking about pumping carbon under the ground to improve the environment. This sounds like this is a natural alternative to helping improve our environment, yet it's getting killed.
Yes, and it's all about trying to work together, and people have to feel that they're going to be fairly treated. And I think with the original wording of the bill, the industry felt like they were already not going to be fairly treated. So we amended the bill, and it should have been fine, but they were already like gun shy.
Right.
So we'll keep talking, and we'll see where it goes. Maybe next year we can come to some agreement on how we should word
or get
the
some
bill
grants for it.
Yes, and to be able to tell the task force exactly what to study. We're not looking for a predetermined outcome. We're looking for recommendations. Is there some other possibility that could be just as effective and affordable?
And these are all the things that happens when you talk about legislation. These are all the things, having the discussion provides a lot of alternatives that can improve in this case, our environment and our community, and even more fertile ground, which we could help not have to do as much fertilizer, I guess.
Yeah, and even the farmers that I've spoken to would like to consider more alternatives too. A lot of them tell me that their least favorite day of the year is the day that they have to actually light the fire on the field, and it's because there's so much potential there. When everything goes right, no problem, but every now and then, Mother Nature sometimes doesn't read the weather report.
Yeah.
The wind can shift, and then we have a problem. So it's a very stressful time for the farmers.
And one last thing about it, because I don't want to talk about it too much longer, it amazes me, though, that the farmers didn't do things on their own before, or I guess generations after generations of just burning it was the natural way, that they didn't think about it, that it now takes legislation to bring it to light that, hey, maybe we need to do something different.
Well, I wouldn't say that they haven't done some things on their own. It's the farmers that came up with this device that I was just describing for the harvesters. So they are moving that way, but sometimes we would like to give them a hand. And if a study commission can bring people together, bring people to the table, and we can have better communication,
Love it.
Then that's how we may discover some more alternatives more quickly.
Okay, we have a few more here. We got H.R. 10, early childhood, request that the State Department of Education revise. You already sound like you know about this one. I can see the head shake.
Yep. H.R. 10 itself did not pass, and it has been replaced now with a new H.R. that'll be probably at the bottom of your list, which we passed out of House Education today. This is a resolution that simply asks for the Department of Education to complete their draft of the early learning standards that will take into consideration all the public input that's been gathered over months, and present that draft to Bessie at their June meeting, which will now be alongside the draft that the review committee that was tasked with drafting the new the new standards, will be presenting. So my expectation is that both the review committee and the Department of Education will put 2 drafts of the early childhood learning, ELDS, Early Learning and Development Standards, before Bessie, and they'll have 2 drafts to consider at their meeting. They may choose one or the other, or they may put together some combination of both. But the whole reason for the resolution is that the review committee, as they were meeting over time, did not significantly change their draft after considering all the public input.
Mm-hmm.
We had 599 public responses, and 82% of those were specifically complaining about the social and emotional learning section of the draft. And when they came to their last committee, and they finally had a quorum after this was their 4th try, and they changed the draft, supposedly after consideration of the public input, they didn't really change the section that we were talking about. I think they changed like the title of one section, and they took out one standard from someplace.
I'm going to go off in a slightly
insignificant.
different direction on this.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to something I said on my show last night. I did a show about bureaucracy. Well, actually, I did a show. It had a section on bureaucracy on it. And what happens in our country is so much bureaucracy has been created to help move legislation and other things, just a list of, countless other things that bureaucracy does for us. But also, it sounds to me like this has to go through a lot of bureaucratic red tape. Hopefully it doesn't create any additional levels of bureaucracy to make it happen. But the reality is, this is one of the reasons why a lot of our good legislation doesn't have good actions, is because it has to go through so much bureaucracy. Is that am I saying the right thing pertaining to this, you think?
Well, in this case, what has happened is that the people who were tasked with doing a job are required by law to have public input, and they got it, and they ignored it. And so here we are.
This is why we need these pieces of legislation. H.R. 67 posthumously commends Glenn Hen Daigle for his military service.
Yes. Mr. Daigle was from Labadyville, which is in my district, and he served very honorably. He was a POW for, I think, 7 years, and went through torture and things I won't describe. And he came back, and he had a long life, and he passed away this year. And so this was a commendation to recognize him for
Well,
his
thank you to
service.
Glenn Daigle and his family for his service. Appreciate that. We've got, 186 commends the members and volunteers of the 2023 Concerned Women for America of Louisiana Encourage a Legislature Project. I actually interviewed Penny Nance in Washington, D.C. Last month. So I'll let you tell about what 186 does.
Sure. Concerned Women for America is a group that watches over, in this case, watches over legislation, and they're looking from a biblical perspective, and they talk to us as legislators, and they encourage us to bring bills and have them align with a biblical perspective. And the reason that we were recognizing them when they were here in person was specifically their Encourage a Legislator project, where they send us a postcard while we're in session regularly, just to say things like, "We're praying for you," and it's just very nice. When I get those postcards, I keep them in my desk, and on a hard day, I'll just open the desk and start browsing them, and it reminds me there are people praying for us because they want us to do the right thing and to bring honor and glory to the Lord by the work that we do here.
I might just put Penny Nance's bonus content after this with the interview that I did for her in D.C. Early Childhood 192 requests that the State Department of Education revise the proposed early learning and development. Is this part of that one? That's the new one?
The reason I had to bring two was the first one that I brought was it did not pass the House because many people felt that we needed to give that review committee that one more chance.
Okay.
And so I was bringing it at that time in case they didn't have a quorum, because they hadn't had a quorum for 3 meetings in a row.
Sometimes, yeah, exactly right.
And so if they didn't manage to pull off a quorum, at least we would have the department issuing a set of standards. But the majority of the body felt like we needed to just go ahead and give them that extra opportunity. We'll still be here in session, and we are. So they did manage to pull off a quorum, which was great, but they didn't produce a set of standards that really paid any attention to all of the public input. The draft that they proposed didn't change significantly, and so that's why I brought the second resolution, the one we spoke about a minute ago.
A couple more questions here. We're going to talk about one more. We're talking about budget. 199 requests that the State Department of Education conduct a survey relative to recess. So obviously, the other bill, when it didn't go through, this is a study or a replacement bill of some sort that allows a study to be done. Is that what this is?
Oh no, the recess bill is alive and well.
Okay.
It's going to be in Senate Ed tomorrow, and hopefully it'll do well there. But when we were having the discussion on the House floor, there were members from 2 large cities where the majority of their schools are charter schools, and the bill did not have a requirement that charter schools also offer a minimum of 15 minutes recess. So they were going to bring an amendment to include charter schools, and so when the time came for them to bring up the amendment, they withheld it. And so I asked them why, and they said, well, we weren't sure that the Senate would feel the same, and so we withheld the amendment. So what I did instead was I got together with another representative who's from one of the big cities, and this resolution is asking the Department of Education to survey the charter schools and to report back to us how many charter schools may not have at least 15 minutes of recess per day for K through 5. And the Charter School Association is fine with it. I've already talked to them about it. They're already gathering the numbers, and they could actually just call and tell us, but for the sake of the public conversation, I said, is it okay with you if I actually put this in the form of a resolution so that your numbers actually appear in the public record? And they said, oh, that's fine. So everybody's happy, and we're awaiting the numbers. And if we find that a great number of charter schools do not offer the minimum of recess, then we will work with the Charter School Association about the importance of recess and the benefits of it, and see if they're willing to require that of themselves. If not, then someone, maybe me, maybe someone from the big cities, may bring a bill next year to require the charters to also give that minimum of recess. It's that important.
I like this. Man, this just kind of, I don't want to say puts teeth into the first one, and maybe that I asked the question the wrong way, about pertaining to the first one, but this kind of puts more teeth into the first one, or more, how shall I say, more energy into that first bill?
Well, I'm hoping that it soothes the concerns of some people who represent districts where the vast majority, or maybe all, of their schools are charter schools. I like the idea that charter schools are public schools that are privately run. I like that they have a lot of autonomy, and I appreciate that. So I don't like the idea of having to dictate, in law what they have to do, because that messes with their autonomy. But at the same time, recess is that important, and if the vast majority of charter schools don't recognize that, then someone may bring a bill next year to also require it for the charter schools.
I like the urging the process of it. I see you wearing pin number 36. We talked about that with Danny McCormick. The 36, why are you wearing the 36?
Well, I'm one of those people that is determined that in this time when we have a budget excess, this is not the time to bust the spending cap. Just because we have excess money does not mean we have to spend every bit of it.
Right.
So right now in the House, we believe that we have an excess because that money has been taken from the pockets of taxpayers. And so we would really like to kind of give that back. If it's excess, it means we haven't used it. We don't need it at this moment. So what we're proposing is to do some special things with that excess, like pay down some debt, like put some money into the rainy day fund, for example, and we could even possibly cut some taxes. But anyway,
let's not get too optimistic here.
But the idea is that we are trying to make use of the excess in ways that give us an immediate and a long-term benefit. Whereas it seems that on the Senate side, what they want to do instead is just spend it all. And we will come into next year and still have the debt. Interest is just making the bank rich. It's not really helping us. So we have a disagreement, and right now I'm one of the people in the House who is standing in the way of the 2/3 majority needed to bust that spending cap.
So you're standing firm. We're not gonna do like they do in Washington D.C., where they just raise the money. Which I talked about this on my show last night too, where I said it's unique how these elected officials in D.C. keep raising our debt limit, and they do it to be able to fund, let's say, pet projects, or they do it to fund government or whatever they want. But because they're not actually raising taxes to get the money, they can still say, hey, we didn't raise taxes on you. Aren't we great? We didn't raise taxes. Meanwhile, they're printing more money, raising the national debt, which is causing inflation, which is the hidden tax. So is that a bigger analogy of what can happen here in Louisiana if they keep electing here to raising the spending limit and spending the money instead of paying down debt?
Well, there's definitely a lot of similarity. The biggest difference, though, between Baton Rouge and Washington is in Washington, they can do just that. They just keep printing money.
Printing money, yeah.
In Baton Rouge, we are under requirements of law that every year when we come in, we have to pass a budget, and that budget has to be balanced. Now, I tell people, you may not like how we end up balancing it, but it has to be balanced. So if by 6 p.m. on June 8th, when this session ends, if we have not passed a balanced budget, then our work is not done, and we are required by law to come right back in a special session and keep on fighting.
I know today they deferred it. They deferred something until tomorrow. I don't know why that happened. It was kind of people can watch that on camera, but we have to encourage, I guess, our legislators on the Senate side to be frugal with our money, while there's people like you wearing that 36 pin on the House side that's saying, no way, Jose, we're not going to raise the debt limit. Any other comments on it?
Well, let's see. What we did on the House floor today, there was a motion to suspend the rules, the rule meaning that a certain instrument has to lie over till the next day before we can move it. There was a motion to suspend the rules so that the bill that's coming over from the Senate, that is the bill that raises the debt ceiling, that busts the spending cap, I'm sorry, that's Washington.
Yeah.
The bill that busts the spending cap, it's Senate Concurrent Resolution 3. If that motion had passed, then that bill would be heard tomorrow in Appropriations Committee. But we objected and we voted, and it did not get the votes it needs to suspend the rules for it to be heard tomorrow. So now it will not be heard tomorrow. It will probably be heard maybe Monday. And so we just felt that those of us who
It just puts
voted,
it off a little bit more.
Yes, and so one argument is, well, why are you putting off something? We are under a timeline here. We need to get these bills moving. But those of us who voted to not allow the bill to be heard tomorrow, our position is we're not ready to even consider that bill. We are still waiting to see the Senate's version of the budget. How do we know that we need to raise the spending cap?
Makes sense to me.
Not that I plan to, but how do we even know we need to? Because when we sent a budget over there, it was a balanced budget and we didn't need to raise the spending cap. So it has obviously changed, and we don't know by how much because we haven't seen it. So we don't want to be like
So
Washington.
they basically, on this side, somebody wanted a vote on something that you all haven't even seen yet before it gets here. Is that the right way to put it?
That's the general idea, yes. They want us to be able to handle and vote on raising the expenditure limit when we haven't even seen a budget that tells us, or that supposedly tells us that we must.
So going back to comparing the state budget to the Washington, D.C. budget, to our nation's budget, where they say things like you have to pass to see what's in it.
Yes.
You all said, no, we ain't passing it until we see what's in it.
That's right. Just like you don't sign a document till you read it, well, I don't want to vote on a budget until I've seen it.
I
don't want to vote on the bills that provide the funding for the budget until I've seen the budget we're trying to provide funding for. So to me, this all makes perfect sense, and I'm glad that today the proper number of my colleagues agreed with that. And so now we are not hearing a bill tomorrow prematurely.
Any favorite bill this session?
Oh, goodness. Well, my parental rights parental rights is fundamental constitutional amendment was my favorite bill, but I understand that with all of the other things going on, I'm happy to hold it till next
It's
year.
not the right time.
I just have to get reelected so that I can bring it next year.
And you know, there's a lot of debate going on. In my opinion, there should be legislation for this. Would you support legislation requiring legislators to update their pictures on the Louisiana legislative site regularly? Would you support that kind of legislation for them to update that?
No. I like the picture that I have posted right now, and if the next picture I take isn't as nice, I like the option to keep that one.
To
for a
keep
little
that
while
one.
longer.
So you wouldn't support that
Yes.
legislation then?
No.
Okay.
That's getting to be too much government there.
And with as much debates going on, I hear they're debating. I heard them debate a chicken sandwich the other day.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. Yeah.
Should we have a chicken sandwich as a state sandwich?
Well, I don't know. I would think that there's some variety of a po' boy that might be better as a state sandwich.
All right. Although I talked to someone with an Italian descent, they said the muffalata.
Well,
So,
I don't know. I might have to argue the shrimp po' boy. I'm from the Bayou region.
Representative Amadee, is there anything else you want to end up with before we close up here?
Just that we're counting down. We're in the final days of session. I don't think anybody wants to come back for a special session, but I am absolutely ready to get things done properly.
Awesome. Everybody else, please share the interview. And after this interview on the podcast version, I'll have some bonus content for you. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Representative Amadee. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
All right, you have a great day.
You too.
Everybody else, share the interview, please.